I'd like to, at this time, call to order the Lynchburg City School Board work session for June the 20th, 2023. And as we call our meeting to order, I would like to move us to Section B. And under Section B, the chair would be delighted to entertain a motion to allow the electronic participation of Dr. Kimberly Sinha for the reasons stated. And is there a motion to approve remote participation?
Second.
Been moved by Dr. Gupta and seconded by Dr. Carter that we would approve the remote participation. Dr. Sinha, any further questions or discussion on this motion?
You just need to identify which one of those reasons she's
Oh, I'd be
participating.
delighted to. Which one is it?
It's 4.
Reason number 4, a personal matter. All right, with that having been stated, are we ready to vote? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member Ms. Preston.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Trost.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
She's
Yeah.
not voting yet.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan. School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha, and remember, whenever you feel the need to say something, either your colleagues will help me know that you're trying to say something, and I'll continuously be referring to you as well, wherever needed to engage your participation as well. All right, we would now like to go to Section C, which is our agenda approval, and the work session agenda has been featured on board docs. What is the pleasure of the board around approving tonight's agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
All right, been motion made by Dr. Brennan, seconded by Ms. Preston. Any further questions or discussion on the agenda approval for tonight's work session? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member Ms. Preston.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Trost.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
We'll now stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wow, that sounded mighty good. A group of 9 persons who deeply love our country, our city, and Lynchburg City Schools. At this time, we will move into Section D of our agenda items, and item 1 is Human Resources Report for Action. Dr. Edwards.
Yes. And just to remind the board, normally we don't have action items on our work session agenda, but during the month of May, June, and July, when we are busily hiring, we do have action items there. So what you will see in the Human Resources Report are nominations for teachers and staff, as well as some transfers and other items.
All right, you've heard from the superintendent regarding the need for action on our Human Resources Report. Is there any need for discussion, or is there a motion? Dr. Day,
I just have a question.
please.
The listings under transfers, is the assignment their new position or their old position?
It is their new position.
Okay, that's what I expected, but since it's different for the others, I thought I'd clarify that.
Dr. Gupta.
Just for the record, it's like a broken record, 13 resignations, 6 nominations. So the gap is there, and hope we have a plan to fill that. I'm looking at Ms. Scott, she's there? Okay. As we move into the,
Some of them have been filled. I mean, you'll see on here the resignation of Dr. Jeff Guerin from T.C. Miller. You also see the appointment of, or transfer of Kristen Rhodes right into T.C. Miller. So some of them we're working on, but point well taken.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta and Dr. Day. Any further questions? Is there someone who would like to make a motion to approve the Human Resource Report?
I so move.
All right, Mr. Charles has made a motion. Is there a second to his motion? Dr. Day, any further questions on the approval of the Human Resources Report from members of the board? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member Ms. Preston.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Charles.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
All right, Dr. Edwards would like to make an announcement.
Thank you. I just, even though it was public on the agenda, I just do want to pause and congratulate Kristen Rose, who is going to be the new, or who has been approved as the new T.C. Miller principal. And Kristen is a assistant principal at EC Glass, also a former teaching staff member coordinator at Fort Hill. So she brings a wealth of experience with working with diverse populations, and we're looking forward to the great work she's going to do at T.C. Miller.
All right, Mr. Charles, and then Dr. Gupta.
And I also want to second the fine work that Ms. Rhodes has done. I've had interactions with her on different occasions and always been very impressed with her, her willingness to take things under control and really knock it out, and always is well prepared. So congratulations. Look forward to having her as our principal there.
Thank you, Mr. Charles. Dr. Gupta.
Dr. Edwards, you must be reading my mind, because when my only interaction was at EC Glass graduation. I said, man, this lady needs to apply for a principal job. How she was coordinating, finger up for music to start. So it was very well managed event. Miss Rose was at the stage and she was managing the back end of it. And as I was watching her, I said, she's the ideal candidate. And when I saw this email, I said, somebody was reading their mind at that time. So great choice. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Edwards, and all of your team for getting these positions filled with well-qualified and ready persons to serve our young people. All right, we will now move to D2 and the LCS School Culture and Climate Survey information. And Dr. Edwards is going to bring on our presenter, and we are so thankful for the outstanding service that you have provided and will continue to provide with Lynchburg City Schools. Dr. Edwards.
Yes, so Director Reeves is here to kind of go over the highlights of the Culture and Climate Survey. We give it every year. We've kind of standardized it and used Qualtrics so that we could look at repeatable trends over years. The data that you're going to receive is division-wide summative data, but just know that each of the individual school principals did receive their own data, and we're grateful for Ms. Reeves working alongside of Chuck, Mr. Yarbrough, for putting this together and sharing this with us. So, Ms. Reeves.
Awesome. Good evening, Dr. Coleman and distinguished members of our school board. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share this information from the Spring 2023 Culture and Climate Survey. I want to thank all students, families, and employees who participated to provide our leaders with valuable feedback. I also want to thank our principals, the Equity and Community Relations team, the Information Technology team, and as stated, Mr. Chuck Yarbrough, our educational data analyst who navigated the Qualtrics system to compile the data. The purpose of the survey is to gather information from our students, our parents and guardians, and employees about our school culture and climate. We then use the feedback to acknowledge the things that are important to continue while making the adjustments that will help us improve. So that we're all on the same page, I often like to take a minute just to define culture and climate and to make sure that we understand that while they're often used together, they're not synonymous. Culture speaks to the shared values, the mission statement that exists in a school. These are the beliefs and the norms that govern the decision-making or the operations in the building. School climate refers to the social and educational environment that reflects directly on the students and their relationships with their teachers, their staff, and their peers. It's the setting that's established for learning, academics, and overall productivity. And just as a reminder, LCS has its set of core values, and our core values are integrity, respect, teamwork, and learning. You may hear many times our schools have different cultures within their buildings. So I think we all have heard Principal Womack talk about we do it better when we do it together. That is that culture that is established there. And then the things that he puts in place create the climate in the particular building. The main difference between school culture and climate is that the culture is the values and beliefs behind the school. It's the mission statement, while the climate reflects directly on the students and their relationships with the students, with the teachers and the staff. The survey was the same survey administered last year. It's 10. We used the Qualtrics survey tool, which we find even this year is phenomenal. Mr. Yarborough was able to do even more work with that system, and I think you'll be pleased with the data or the presentation of the data, how he's formatted that for us. There were 10 questions per survey. Our survey groups included elementary school, our 5th graders, middle school students, high school students, our parents and guardians, employees, both school-based and non-school-based were surveyed, okay? The statements were rated on a Likert scale, where 1 was strongly agree, 2 disagree, 1 strongly disagree, 2 disagree, 3 neutral, 4 agree, and 5 strongly agree. What I'm going to do, as Dr. Edwards stated, was just give you a summary of the actual results here. So for elementary school students, and I want us to note that the responses were lower than they were last year. And I'll be just completely transparent. We did the survey later this year, which was not a good thing. We kind of ran into SOL testing time. And there were just a lot of different things going on. Our facilities master plan survey was going on. And so my team knows that next year we need to scoot it back and make sure that we have ample time to do that so that we can get an ample number of respondents. But of those who responded, the 235 responses at the 5th grade level, we see that our students indicate their parents care about their education and their teachers at the school expect them to be successful. And I think that that's something that we just have to continue to note. We have adults who care about our children. The highest percentage of change relates to school staff, communicates good news to my parents and guardians about my progress. With lower averages, elementary students indicate concerns regarding reporting discrimination and harassment, clarity and fairness of school rules and academic programs. This year, elementary students indicate that they feel less safe inside, outside, and around the school. And I just think that we just need to pause there. In light of the increase in violence in our community, it has impacted our schools. It just does, okay? For our middle school student survey, significantly fewer students responded at the middle school level, which may account for the decrease in the percentage of change from last year to this year. Of those who responded, the most positive ratings were similar to those at the elementary level, where my parents and guardians care about my education and the teachers at the school expect me to be successful. I just feel like that is good news, and we need to really continue that work as the adults that are working with our students. Also, similarly, there is support needed around clarity and fairness of school rules and academic programs, along with communication particularly of good news to our families about the students, and then the processes for reporting discrimination, harassment, and bullying. At the high school level, parents and guardians, again, care about their children's education, and this is what the students are sharing with us, and their teachers expect them to be successful. Again, communication about their success in school, the good news, just the issue around safety, and I have to reiterate, inside, outside, and around the school continues to be of concern, and I believe we know that. Here we see high school students disagreeing that their ideas and opinions are sought in the development of rules and regulations. And I know that we'll continue to encourage our principals to have their principals' cabinets and to hear from students so that they can provide more input. With regard to the school employee surveys, again, these are employees who work in the school building. Our employees indicate that administrators and supervisors are accessible. Employees hold high expectations of themselves to help children of all backgrounds. When we talk about culture, they understand and believe that our values are of a priority, or that priority is placed on our core values, with more work to be done around creating an atmosphere of safety and respect in the school. For non-school-based employees, similarly, or similar to the school-based employees, we see administrators and supervisors continuing to support their staff members, continuing to be accessible to discuss job-related concerns. While the average is 3.43, we see that more work can be done to support our non-school-based employees. More opportunities can be given to help them grow professionally and develop their skills so that we are sure to create that environment of safety and respect among each department. Our parents, 554 responses. Our parents, as indicated here by the highest average, see that teachers and staff have high expectations for their children. So not only do our employees believe they have high expectations, our students believe they have high expectations, our parents are seeing that the adults working with their children have high expectations for them. School staff are willing to listen to parents and guardians. Communicating good news to parents and guardians about their children, keeping them informed about how to report bullying, discrimination, harassment, and/or assault are areas that we continue to improve. And as mentioned in every category, school safety, inside, outside, and around the school community continue to be of importance. When we look at our themes, we just, again, stress that there is an appreciation for the caring teachers, the lunch staff, all those who work with our students, and this is from our elementary students. There is appreciation for school staff who communicate good news to parents and guardians. There's a welcoming environment for all students, and with that, we understand that we just have to continue the work around school safety, again, inside, outside, and around our schools. For secondary students, the appreciation for caring teachers and staff continues to exist. We also acknowledge that we have caring parents and guardians. The concerns, I feel like I'm saying the same thing over, but it's just that these concerns are prevalent. Concerns for bullying as well as safety inside, outside, and around the school. Our parents and guardians have an appreciation for all of our employees, and that is good news. They would like to see more communication with regard to the good news that's shared about their students, and then they would like to address or have addressed the concerns about safety and bullying. Our employees are working in a positive environment or creating a positive environment for students and teachers. They are caring employees. Support is needed for increase or more severe student behaviors, and we know that our Student Services Department is working on that. More communication and collaboration between school administrators and central office administrators, and then concerns about safety, again, inside, outside, and around the school, and respect for others. When we think of next steps, the work must continue, of course. We must continue to communicate. It's so important to get the perceptions of our stakeholders. And so communicating with them, hearing from them about those various topics is going to be important. The collaboration, when we hear of those concerns, positive, negative, or indifferent, that we collaborate, that we come to the table and talk about those things, and then that we position ourselves to make the changes that are necessary to continue to improve and continue our tradition of excellence here in Lynchburg City Schools. Are there any questions?
All right, I see Dr. Day's hand. Go right ahead.
My understanding is this survey is mandated by the state. Is that correct?
This is a survey that we started on our
'Cause
own.
I found a DOE webpage about this that has guidelines and it's
Yes,
supposed to
the
be,
Department of Criminal Justice also does a survey that we administer to schools at various grade levels. And this one is one that we've put
okay.
together as a part of our.
So it's not a state mandated thing.
It's not the Department of Criminal Justice one that we have to
Right.
do, if that's the one you're
Okay,
referring to.
well, what happens, other than what we do with the results? Do these results get reported anywhere?
The results go to each building principal or department lead for
But
the
outside of our school division, did they go to Richmond or anything like that?
not this survey, but the Department of Criminal
Right.
Justice.
Yeah, I'm
and
speaking about this
This
survey.
one, no, they do not.
Now, you addressed the low response rate a little bit, saying that
Yes.
the timing had something to do with that. The response rate, particularly among students, is extremely low. For the middle school, it says there's 166 responses, and I think our middle school population is something like 1,800. That's less than 1 in 10. So, to me, I know there can be lots of factors that affect that response, but to me, that makes the results of this pretty meaningless. It's hard to draw any conclusion where only 1 in 10 of the people who should be responding actually filled it out. And I think the same applies for the high school. It was a little bit higher response rate, but again, it's hard to draw any conclusions based on such a small sample. So I don't know if there's anything, if this is really important to us, and if we are actually deriving some guidance from this, I think we need to find a way to get a much higher response rate. Do you have any idea about the response rate for the employees? I have no idea. It says on that page, it says there's a total of 452 responses. Is that better than 1 in 10?
Is that on, are you looking on the school?
I'm looking at page 9 of the presentation.
Sorry, I don't have the presentation.
School base is 452.
Yeah.
We did have 661 responses last year.
How
I
many
do not
last
have the
year?
total number.
How many last year?
661.
Yeah, so that's down by almost a third.
And then 169 non-school based. This year, there were 115 responses last year.
Yeah. One of the things that we want to do, not just with this survey, but just in general, looking at a month at a time, is so that we don't have survey fatigue.
Yes.
Because
Of
we
course.
were right in the middle of doing the MGT, and after a while, folks just decide, I've done my survey duty and I don't want to
certainly
do it.
understand that.
So spreading this out a little bit so that we do get accurate and meaningful data. The other thing for kids is not, for kids in buildings, not issuing it to students during the time where some may be taking SOLs
Right.
and, that kind of thing.
And the links are actually sent to the students' emails.
So they fill it out online, is that correct?
That's correct. And that may be something that can be done a little differently.
Yeah, you could maybe
because
have some way of reminding students who haven't filled it out yet that we still haven't heard from you about the survey and.
So it is anonymous. The link
Yeah.
allows it to be anonymous. However, one of the things I was going to mention is that we can do a better job of making sure they have allotted class time to fill out the survey.
Yeah, I know at Virginia Tech, students were required to fill out an evaluation of their instructor for each of the classes they took. And for a period of time, students who didn't do that, they wouldn't release their final grades. So if you wanted to see your final grades, you had to fill out the surveys.
What happened to that deal?
Well, I don't think it lasted long,
That's what I thought.
but it
Sounds like a
wasn't.
lawsuit to me.
But it was an incentive. It was an incentive.
Dr. Gupta, then, Randy, go ahead.
I mean, I will say statistics wasn't my strong suit in the E-School. Maybe Dr. Sinha can chime in. But I think a statistically valid sample would be kind of a 1 in 10. So the sample of 100 or so, and you beat, I know I've seen information on a sample size, at least get 100. So I think we've met that criteria. But maybe Dr. Sinha can chime in on this one. So I see your point that we'd like to get more participation, but I think statistically speaking, I think the sample size may be okay as we take it for what it's worth. And I really think I'm looking at trends. Even the changes here, you're looking at statistical error, perhaps. So I'm looking at trends more than the actual absolute numbers.
Yes.
So that's how I take it. And maybe Atul, you can speak to that, but maybe Dr. Sinha, you can chime in on sample
Dr.
size.
Sinha, would you like to comment before Dr. Gupta? If not, we will move on to Dr. Gupta.
Well, I'd be happy to comment. One, this isn't a sample, but, well, it could be a sample. Did we solicit from everyone?
Yes.
Or did we draw a sample and only send it to those people?
All fifth graders.
All sixth
All
through
fifth
eighth
grade.
graders.
Okay. Yeah, so sample, issues of sample and sample representation aren't relevant in this case because we're inviting the entire population, if you will, to participate. And so 1 in 10 is really not good because it's one thing with these kind of surveys is they are self-selective. So a lot of times what you may get is people who are really happy and the people who are really unhappy. That can happen. There's a self-selection bias there. So the nice thing with Qualtrics and maybe with a little bit of better planning is to send it out via email, and then it wouldn't be anonymous, but could be kept confidential. You can track responses, follow up with non-respondents. You can do things like if you respond by this date, you're entered into a drawing for a $15 Amazon gift card or something like that, or free admission to something. I don't know, but there are affordable incentives that you can include in here, especially among students, that could drive up the response rates. And certainly, yes, you want to do this survey at a time when there are no other surveys of major importance going out. I would recommend that. And then just one more observation. We have school-based and non-school-based employees, but I would really like to see that disaggregated, who are teachers and who are other school-based, to look at what our teachers are saying, if that could be provided for us at some point. And I yield.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha, for
Thank
that
you.
insight, and thank you very much, Dr. Gupta.
So I don't want to get lost into the statistics, and I assume there is no non-response bias in this data. So non-respondents don't bring any additional bias, or respondents,
Which that could be.
So let's say the non-response bias is statistically insignificant, but what I'm interested in hearing is one of the bullet points, and maybe from the Dr. Edwards, the bullet point was change, right? So what change are we planning to bring? Because to me personally, we are an academic district, and school rules and academic programs are clear and fair is below average. It's like threes. Higher up you go, the worse the score gets. Is that troubling? You understand what I'm saying? I don't feel safe in the school. Is that troubling? I'm looking at things which we can change and make our district better. And irrespective of sample size, even if 5 students are responding and they are not clear about their academic program and they are in the high school, that is troubling. Am I making sense, Dr. Edwards?
You're making perfect
So,
sense.
my question to you, and I'm going to put you on the spot, what changes are you planning to bring, or maybe you can bring back later on, in terms of what do we need to do? So these kids know at least the basic minimum, the academic school rules and academic programs. How do I survive in an environment when the rules are not clear to me? You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Everything else is okay, but to me, I'm in an academic program and somebody is not clarifying. This is a high school respondent, right? Middle school is 3.12, high school is 3.424, and the elementary school is 3.7. Higher up they go, the worse it gets. And all the middle school and high schools are in red except for one question. So I look at it, what do we take away from this? How can we make ourselves better? And you had one of the bullets called change. And change is a pretty long word. I teach a class on change management, which goes for 15 weeks. And you doing presentation in 5 minutes. So I don't know if we have a laid out plan. Has it been discussed in this building, what the change will be going forward?
Well, let me back up to a couple different things. So first, one of the changes we made last year was adding non-school-based personnel, because it used to just be schools. And we had no way of knowing like what this building, transportation, and other departments. So that's one thing that we looked at. So that information does go back to those relative directors of those programs. As far as the schools are concerned, while the more you slice it, the smaller the sample size becomes, obviously, at a school level. But as a building principal, it would be important to me to look at my data. What are my students saying? Some building principals actually use this data as part of their either professional growth plan, which we do every 2 years, or their formal evaluation plan, which is similar to mine with the multiple categories. There's a category on school climate, and they use that information to build the climate. So for example, I know last year, one of the buildings, the score was okay, but they weren't happy with the score, and they worked to really improve it was a student score, what the students felt about that particular category in that building. So that's some of the things that we look at when we have our summer leadership, when we meet with all the building and department leaders. We do kind of put data in front of them so that they can start developing the goals. The other thing we need to do is really work on the importance of the survey. And I like what Dr. Sinha said. You know, you're very, very angry, you fill it out. You're very happy, you might fill it out, and then if you're just like, it's okay, I'm not going to fill it out, they know what I mean. We don't necessarily get that data. So to make sure that we're looking at that, particularly in areas where we can make measurable goals for improvement. So if one of the things that the kids feel like is my voice is not heard, where are the opportunities in a school? Now, I heard that too. So one of the changes that I made here was I started bringing young people to come and speak to the school board as a part of the school board, because they're like, we see the high school students, they always get to talk at the school board meetings, but we don't get to share at the school board meetings. Well, now we do. So we look at that data and make changes like that. To the point of safety, which I think is the big one, because that's where we see the biggest variability in change in scores. And I know we've done some physical things around the buildings to put in the vestibule so that we have a little bit more measure of safety. There is a safety press conference tomorrow at 10 o'clock at EC Glass, where we're going to talk about another safety initiative that Lynchburg City Schools is partnering with LPD and community members for. There's also, Dr. Wodeker and team wrote a grant so that we could get the SSOs. Remember, we had 5 SROs, school resource officers, in our secondary buildings who covered our elementary buildings. This was to get more presence there. Those are the things within the schools. We need to make sure that our kids understand the safety protocols and we're even looking at the way that we communicate lockdowns, lockouts, and what does that mean? I mean, I'm very familiar with the terminology, but maybe not so much the outside community or even the students within the building to understand that. We met with LPD, especially after the most recent EC Glass lockdown that lasted for a couple hours, actually most of the day, to talk about ways to better do that. I think that was, for our students, our staff, our community, a pretty traumatic experience that we do not want to have to repeat for that. So there are some things that we're doing in terms of that as well.
So safety has another ancillary word along with it, respect. And you can see the low scores from students, from school-based employees, from non-school-based employees. So is discipline an issue in our district? And that's what driving this low scores on safety, but along with that, respect.
Yeah, well, we know that discipline is having a major effect not only in Lynchburg City Schools, but just almost everywhere. And we're seeing some things that we haven't seen before. We're seeing, you all are probably seeing more of an elementary presence at discipline meetings. We're seeing differences in, and we're hearing this from the medical community as well as with younger students and their mental health in terms of just their ability to self-regulate. We're seeing that with some of our middle and high school students as well. You notice it with the violence, the uptick in the streets in terms of what's going on and the quickness at which gun violence is involved in other disputes. And that's something that's problematic here in many different places as we're seeing. So to the degree that we are doing things like our restorative academies, our centers, our youth mental health, mandatory training for all staff members, and using those strategies to work with the young people, but also work with the adults that work with the young people to kind of get an awareness around what is, appropriate. And discipline's not a bad word, because when you think about discipline, you have to be disciplined in your eating habits and in your workout habits and in your academic habits. So it's not a bad word. It's something that we want for children. And it's something that they should want for themselves, to be disciplined. So turning that around so that it doesn't sound like a negative thing, but rather this is the road to being a good, better person for yourself. And getting kids to set goals and combining that with looking at all of the social emotional support that goes along with that. And it's not just, hey, Lynchburg City Schools, let's react when kids misbehave. Let's be proactive about guiding them towards positive behaviors. So we just came back from Scholar Identity Model. We did that program last year, and we had a student and their parent come speak to the board about their experience there. But that is one of the things, along with the mentoring and the tutoring that we're doing, that we're trying to engage our young people in. How can you make positive behavioral choices to set yourself up and fill that and beyond backpack, right? So that when you get to graduation, it's not followed by, look at my discipline referrals. It's really followed by, look at my credentials and my certificates and my community service and how I'm ready to take on the next journey.
All right, very good. Dr. Gupta, do you have further statements? Go right ahead.
The other question was with the quotes in good news. So is this, in Survey Bird, you call it a skewed question. Is the bad news communicated but not the good news? What was the purpose of putting quotations? You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm failing a class, my parents will know, but if I'm getting an A or excelling, then that's what the good news question was. What were you trying to capture there?
Family engagement, the work of family engagement really focuses on making sure that our families and our parents know that our students are valuable and that they're doing great things. And so that's where that statement came from, even in the academic reviews that were done by the Virginia Department of Education years ago. And so the idea is that we are engaging the family by making sure that we're communicating not just the bad news, but the good news as well.
I think we put it in quotes because we communicate a lot of news, like, okay, this is starting at 6 p.m., be here, drop off, don't do this, move this car, blah, 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 school the bell, blah, blah. We're communicating news, but families and kids wanted to know, what about my child? What is the good news about my child? Which is probably why we put it. We don't need to keep it in quotes now. We're 2 years into that survey, so that schools would communicate, teachers would communicate, and even at a division level, we're communicating some of the wonderful things that kids are doing.
I got one last question, if you give me.
You can ask a series of questions if you like.
So I know you, in my word, it's something called lessons learned in project management. So you had listed lessons learned, but then the next step is, where do we go from here? So you mentioned communicate, collaboration, and change. There were 3 C's. So I'm assuming there's a plan in making, which you'll be bringing to this board to saying, this is how we'll collaborate, this is how we'll communicate, and this is what changes are we going to bring into the buildings going forward.
Yes. So a good friend of mine gave me a book called Buy-In. And what we know about buy-in by John Cotter is that buy-in doesn't work when I just tell you what you're going to do. This is what we're going to do. This is what Crystal Edwards is bringing in the building. We really need to engage the building staff, the building leadership, the teachers, and everyone who work with the children so that we can see improvement in these scores. So it's not as simple as me writing a goal saying next year at Perrymont Elementary School, they're going to score 4.45 because I said so. That doesn't do it. We really have to look at what strategies, behaviors, attitudes, and things that the people that work in the buildings and departments, holding ourselves accountable for the admin department as well, or admin building as well, what we're going to do. So this summer, we start off with our summer leadership, which is just all of our building and department leadership, directors, as well as a couple other key staff to set the tone for what does it mean when we talk about accelerating innovation and excellence, which are the 2 things that we're looking at. And what does that look like in terms of, I see this as being, this is our customer service rating. If our customers are not rating us high, why not, and what can we do about that? And that what can we do filters all the way down into everybody in the building, including involving students in, and I've known students to do this. What can you do in, it's January, a new student comes to school. We all know what that feels like when you walk into the cafeteria and you're like, it's my first day, I don't have a friend group, I don't have a place to sit. How do I feel? How can students make students more welcome? And we know our schools do this because they have the buddy bench and they do a whole bunch of things so that new people feel welcome in there. So that is the plan. We can certainly come back and have building teams sort of present, this is what we're doing in our building. We want to take a look at what that data looks like over the last 2 years, because I think 2 years worth of data is good in each building and each department, and kind of analyze it.
Carter is the guru of change management,
Yes,
and he has another book on leading change.
I have that one too. And Heart for Change.
I'm gonna make a motion that each board member get a copy of those books that you all are speaking so highly of.
We use them
Nobody
as
seconded,
well.
so we're gonna keep moving on. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add to this discussion? I don't want any board member to feel they didn't get a chance to participate.
Ms.
What-
Reeves, one of the statements on here had to do with not feeling like we, Lynchburg City Schools, is communicating information to families and students and that sort of thing. With the amount of technology and so forth that we have, is there some technological way, or could there be some technological way that would enable us to do that in an easier fashion, if you will?
I guess the general answer would be yes. Where we have found the challenge and where we probably need to do a little more work is finding out, one, how our parents and guardians like to be communicated to. So whether it's by text, phone call, email, is there a better time of day that works? I think there needs to be some understanding there. I am aware that the schools, different schools use software, Dojo, Remind, to real time communicate to parents. So I think it's just getting an understanding of when we send out a school messenger using a message using our student management system, are they receiving those? Have numbers
Responding.
changed? Just what is it that's not being communicated, and how can we do it better? There is a lot of technology available that will help us, but it's not effective if we're not making sure that it's reaching the families.
Each school is slightly different in how, you guys probably
Right.
saw that just with, let's get ready for graduation with 2 high schools. You saw the differences in the way that the schools send out information and communicate. And I think one of the things we could do is almost have like a gallery walk of steal the best, right? What is the best that we're doing that is highly favorable by, families who are receiving it? And one of the things that, I noticed from just hiring a new communications team that's been working under Ms. Reeves is that the same message needs to be in multiple formats differently for different folks, right? There's some stuff that's going on in Instagram and in Reels and things that just, maybe above my Facebook pay grade right now, and, some Facebook Live and all of that, as well as some of the things that, like, I know Heritage Elementary School uses Class Dojo every day, right? Every day. I'm on that one. That's a everyday thing. And, you can go on EC Glass's website and kind of get a lot of information as well. And, I get a newsletter from RS Payne that's very detailed and has information from the various departments. So it's a little bit different in each school. I guess we need to figure out for those families what works for them. The one piece of information that a couple different family members gave to me is that when we're advertising division events, we don't necessarily push on the schools. We'll send out our own information, and then, families were nice saying, sometimes we don't look at that. If it didn't come home, in the Sandusky pile, or if it didn't come home, through the Husky newsletter, then I didn't see it. So for us being more intentional when we do like an MGT thing, to make sure that there's a spot in the school communication that also says that, because we know more families are connected to their individual schools.
And I guess that's kind of why I asked that, because like you said, every school is different, but I know what my school needs. And so even though we all get the same information, we respond to it differently depending on who our audience is.
All right. Well, let me just make this statement. I think I can do it in 90 seconds. I just think about the work. This is a work session of the board. And I reflect back when Scott Braybrand was our superintendent. And Ethel, I witnessed you then seeking to do the work that was put in front of you. And likewise, I've seen with Dr. Edwards and the leadership that she has brought to our division. You just have chimed in to do the work. Equity work, communications, family engagement, communication, that's a lot of hard work. And I just want to thank you for the work you're getting ready to do at EC Glass. But I want to thank you for the work that you have been able to do in the capacity that you have served.
Thank you. And I've been asked, am I excited about going back to EC Glass? And I must share with you all that my heart still bleeds blue and white. I am a proud graduate of EC Glass High School, class of '86. But I even reflect that my brother was class of '82. I served as a teacher. I served as math department chair. I served as school counselor. Both of my children are EC Glass graduates. So why not go back home? I'm looking forward to the opportunity. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for that. And that will now move us to D3, Student Services presentation. Dr. Edwards.
Okay, I'm going to ask Dr. Brown to come up and join us. He's going to provide some information, a lot of information about attendance, mental health, and behavior.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, and good evening, members of the board. Dr. Edwards, it's great to see everyone this evening. And I'm looking forward to providing some updates for you from the Office of Student Services. We've been very, very busy this year, and I have some amazing people that work with me on my team, and I felt like I needed to highlight them today. They begged to differ and said that they didn't need to come and that I could do all the presenting, but you've heard from me, so I would love for you to meet them this afternoon and just hear from them. I'm also presenting from my laptop, so a disclaimer, my daughter's probably going to call at some point during this time on FaceTime, and so if you see a cute little girl on the screen,
I understand.
we'll get her off as soon as possible, but hopefully we've blocked that effectively. All right, so I just want to introduce some members of my team, and we have a presentation that's going to go into 4 different categories today: attendance and truancy, but with Ms. Tracy Peastrack, and she can come on up and join me now, and actually, nope, you can just have a seat. Sorry, Mr. And we also have Zoe Stokes, who's our supervisor over mental health and SEL, and we also have Annie Terry, who has contracted conjunctivitis. A fancy way of saying pink eye, but we didn't want to spread that around, so she's going to join us on Zoom today. So we have that, and then I'm going to talk at the end about how we're going to accelerate towards next year, and again, playing off of accelerating innovation and excellence is what we're going to be about next year. So just wanted to reiterate, our vision has always been since the beginning of this year to create a national model for how to provide world-class behavioral and mental health support in an educational setting. And we've been doing just that, and we've been very encouraged to see the interest from people not only around the state, but from other states. We've had someone from school division from North Carolina reach out, some other neighboring counties reach out as well to inquire about the work that we're doing in attendance and truancy, the work with our restorative system that we're building out, and we are well on our way to becoming that, and we're excited to share that. At the beginning of the year, I had several goals that presented to all you all at the retreat, and just wanted to kind of give you an update on what we are doing, what we have been doing. And so one of the things was to create some consistency among our discipline practices. It's always great, especially with the Office of Civil Rights, to make sure that we are being as consistent as possible. And thanks for the work of Ms. Terry in Student Services and Discipline. She's created a matrix and cleared up and cleaned up with Chuck Yarborough our data entry systems, and even with our board long-term hearings, created more consistency there and developing a matrix. So hats off to you all for working through that in those long-term meetings. As far as providing support and to resources to high-needs schools, we have done that. and mainly through our school-based mental health grant by providing another BCBA, Board Certified Behavior Analyst, and more RBTs. We wanted to bring day treatment back, and we have done that and expanded on those services. We had no day treatment service programs in our schools when we got here, and now we are serving over 90 students, and we just got those up and running probably about 3 or 4 months ago, so we'll continue to expand those services. We wanted to hire a restorative practice coordinator. That's the only goal that we didn't do. We pulled back on that because we wanted to restructure some things in a different way to be more efficient and effective and meet the needs that we had. So we're doing that. Research and develop alternative to suspension programs and identify a successful alternative model. And that's our LCS Restore that we presented on earlier this year. So we're really excited that we are accomplishing all of our goals and moving our student services department forward. And now we're going to turn it over to, and lastly, we always want to tie it back into our strategic plan. So there are a couple of objectives there noted at the bottom that all of our goals have been aligned to in our strategic plan as we're about to start that process. I'm looking forward to doing that work with you all. Now I want to bring up Tracy Peastrack and hand it over to her to talk about attendance and the work that her amazing department is doing. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Edwards. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this evening to share information and data from the 22-23 school year. I'm Tracy Peastrack, Student Services Supervisor for Attendance and Truancy. I'd like to begin this evening by recognizing and thanking our team for their hard work and dedication to our Lynchburg City School students and their families. Our team consists of the attendance clerks and coordinators at the school level, the Student Support Specialist team in the administrative building, formerly known as truancy officers, our truancy administrative assistant, and our homeless education and foster care liaison. During the 22-23 school year, these individuals worked tirelessly to support our students and their families with all matters related to attendance, truancy, and housing insecurity. I'll start tonight with an overview of attendance, briefly discuss ITRT, and then move into the support we've provided and we are continuing to provide for our students found eligible for services under the McKinney-Vento Act. McKinney-Vento is the federal act that drives our homeless education program. The local liaison serves as the primary contact between our families, school staff, division personnel, shelter staff, and other service providers. The liaison coordinates services to ensure our students enroll in school and have opportunity to succeed academically. Let's first look at the big picture for attendance. Our students had 138,259 total absences for the 22-23 school year. That's a very large number. I felt a bit overwhelmed when I first saw that number, and I tried to make sense of it, and I tried to put it in perspective for myself. When I thought about the fact that we have 177 school days in our calendar for 22-23, and we have about 7,400 students, our students could have accrued 1,309,800 possible days of absence. So this is about 10%. It's still a very large number. This number includes all excused and unexcused absences in grades K through 12, as well as all out-of-school suspensions. When we're examining total absence, we're really examining all the reasons that keep a student from attending class, and in some cases, the reasons that are leading our students toward chronic absenteeism. Next slide. Our first graph depicts the number of students in each grade level who ended the school year with 5 to 9 total absences. When we look at this graph, we see 204 third graders fell into this category, followed by 199 fifth graders, 194 second graders, 180 kindergartners, and 179 fourth graders. For secondary school, our ninth graders topped the list with 165 students having between 5 and 9 total absences. They were followed closely by 163 10th grade students. All told, 2,136 LCS students missed between 5 and 9 days of school during the 22-23 school year. Next slide. Our second graph depicts the number of students in each grade level who ended the school year with 10 to 17 total absences. Please note that the students on the first graph are not included in this or the next graph. We can see from the data that 214 kindergarten students top the category, followed closely by first grade with 212 students, and 184 seventh grade students. Also important to note is that 178 of our ninth graders and 169 of our 10th graders missed between 10 and 17 days. All told, 2,169 LCS students missed between 10 and 17 school days during the 22-23 school year. Next slide. Our third graph represents the number of students in each grade level who missed 18 or more school days during the 22-23 school year. These students were chronically absent per the state definition of 10%, and chronic absenteeism is one of the indicators for school accreditation. We can see from the data that 225 ninth grade students and 207 10th grade students were chronically absent this school year. In addition, 169 kindergartners, 163 eighth graders, and 145 seventh graders were chronically absent. All told, 1,805 LCS students missed 18 or more days of school during the 22-23 school year. To aid in clarity, this slide shows all total absence by grade level for the school division for the school year. The green represents the number of students with 5 to 9 absences. The blue represents students with 10 to 17 days of absence. The yellow represents the number of students in each grade level with 18 or more absences. All told, 6,110 LCS students were absent from school 5 or more days during the 22-23 school year. For added clarity, that means 89.3% of our ninth graders, 87.3% of 10th graders, 91.5% of kindergartners, and 86% of first graders experienced the greatest number of absences this year for the division based on May enrollment numbers K through 12. This begs the question, why are our students missing so much school? When we have our attendance meetings with families, parents and guardians have provided the following explanations as some of the reason for student non-attendance. Short-term illness, medical or mental health challenges such as anxiety, depression, flu, or chronic headaches, poor academic performance such as failing classes or insufficient credit earned for on-time graduation. The student does not like school and/or refuses to attend school. The student misses the bus frequently. The student is also a parent, about to be a parent, or regularly tends to younger siblings. The parent or guardian or close family member is not well. The student has trouble sleeping and subsequent trouble waking up for school. The student does not feel safe in school or does not feel safe walking to school. The family's facing housing insecurity. The student has peer conflicts. The student is skipping school or classes. Or the student believes their schoolwork can be completed from home and there is no need to go to school. Next slide. Oh, you're there. We've discussed total absence. Now let's discuss unexcused absences. All told, our students had 73,367 unexcused absences during the 22-23 school year. There are several sections of the Code of Virginia that address unexcused absences. For example, Section 22.1-258 requires us to hold a 5-day unexcused absence meeting at the school level. We then document that meeting and attendance plan in our student information system. That same section also drives us to hold ITRT, or the Interagency Truancy Review Team meeting, at 7 unexcused absences. Students are referred. We hold that meeting with a quorum of our community partners. Those providers include DSS, the Court Service Unit, the Community Services Board, which is represented by Horizons Behavioral Health, and Human Services, which is represented by the Children's Services Act. This meeting and the accompanying action plan is also documented in our student information system. The purpose of ITRT is to help each student and his or her family comply with Virginia's compulsory attendance law. The goal is to work together to find success through resources, support, interventions, and recommendations. Each family scheduled for an ITRT meeting receives a folder of community resources from our team. That folder includes things such as the school division calendar, confidential student residency questionnaire. That's a questionnaire we use to determine housing insecurity and to determine whether or not the student will qualify for McKinney-Vento. CareerWorks information, Engage Virginia information, mental health provider brochures, community food assistance programs, and community housing assistance. The recommended supports or interventions may include things such as tutoring, school-based or community mentoring. Engage Virginia, that's the second time I've mentioned it. This is a program paid for by the VDOE in which the student is assigned an academic success coach who can provide encouragement and motivation, help connect the student to base school teachers, provide organization and study tips, or provide educational resources to strengthen reading and math skills. Additional recommendations in ITRT may include establishing a routine with a regular bedtime for the student and/or limiting screen exposure at bedtime, or establishing a routine for the student where the student limits the hours worked outside the home on school nights. I'd like to pause here and point out, each family circumstance is unique to the family and different from their neighbor. ITRT is held all day on Tuesday and every Wednesday afternoon. We schedule each meeting to last 20 minutes. So that means on Tuesdays we have meetings from 8:30 in the morning until 3 p.m., 20 minutes apart. Same thing on Wednesday afternoon. The team works together to understand the barriers each student is facing in regard to non-attendance. It's designed to be preventative, not punitive. The team then works to establish an action plan designed to assist the student in successfully returning to the schoolhouse on a regular basis. The student support specialist works with the family to ensure all components of the action plan are followed and met. If the student's non-attendance does not cease or significantly improve, then a petition may be filed with the Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court. Now that I've discussed the purpose and goal of our Interagency Truancy Review Team, let's look at some data. As this is difficult to see in detail, you do have an informational handout provided in your packet that shows the number of ITRT meetings held each month for each grade level. In the month of September, we held 24 meetings. In October, 80 meetings. In November, 110 meetings. 47 meetings in December, 119 meetings in January, 108 meetings in February, 111 meetings in March, 68 meetings in April, and 75 meetings in May, for a grand total of 742 meetings this year. Looking at the grade levels who came to ITRT, you will see that the 9th and 10th graders had the most meetings this year, which somewhat correlate to the data I shared earlier about total absences. These are the students who are being referred again for 7 unexcused or more absences. Based on these numbers, our student support specialist team expressed an interest in working with our community relations department to provide attendance outreach early in the school year. To that end, I created some maps that allow us to see where in our community we need to focus that outreach. Each push pin represents a student who was invited to ITRT during the 22-23 school year. This is our elementary map. Next slide. This is our middle school map. You may notice the cluster of pins is very similar from the elementary to the middle school. This will provide us with a wonderful opportunity for outreach. Next slide. And this is our high school map. While I'm still disaggregating the ITRT data for the entirety of the year, this graph represents our initial ITRT data from the start of the school year through January 31st. We wanted to know if ITRT was making a difference for our students. The blue bars here represent a successful return to learn with 2 or less unexcused absences following ITRT. The orange represents students who remain truant. We may have filed petitions, or they may have remained on a continue to monitor status. And the gray represents students who transferred out of Lynchburg City Schools, dropped out, or went on homebound. Overall, we were very encouraged by this data. We still have some work to do, as you can see with our 9th and 10th graders. But for grade levels like kindergarten and 7th grade, where the return to learn was 65% and 72% respectively, we do believe the process is successful. I'd like to speak a few minutes about our homeless education program. You'll see up here that we've identified 215 students as eligible under the McKinney-Vento Act for receiving services. And it says it should be 360. So where does that 360 come from? It comes from the SAPE, which is the Small Area Income Poverty Estimate. It's a program developed by the U.S. Census Bureau. That may lead one to wonder why it's not 360. Well, there's a lot of underreporting that goes on. Part of that is because when you say the word homeless, there's a stigma that comes with that. And many of our families and many of our community members and many of our school employees are just learning that when we're talking about McKinney-Vento at the school level, we're also talking about not just homeless like you think street homeless or car homeless. We're talking about families who are doubled up for economic reasons. We're talking about families who are staying in hotels. We're talking about families who are struggling and doing their very best to support their children, and they may be living in substandard housing. All of those descriptors that I just provided may fall under McKinney-Vento. We receive our funding from McKinney-Vento from about 4 major sources, the first of which is a 3-year subgrant. Historically, Lynchburg City Schools has been awarded $61,431 for 3 years. That breaks down to $20,477 a year. We just submitted our proposal for the next 3-year cycle, and we submitted a proposal for $399,500. We did that because homelessness nationwide is on the rise. We are hoping, if awarded, this will allow us to expand the services and wraparound supports to our students who are found eligible under McKinney-Vento. In addition to the subgrants, we have a Title I set-aside that supports Lynchburg City Schools having a full-time homeless education liaison. We also applied for the American Rescue Plan grant and were awarded it in April of 2022 for $112,847. With those monies, we're providing after-school tutoring for our McKinney-Vento students, transportation to and from tutoring. During the school year, we provided dinner for those students as well while they were at tutoring. And we've also provided 6 3-night hotel stays for families in crisis to avoid our students being car or street homeless. We are permitted with those monies to provide a 3-night hotel stay every 2 weeks for a family. And we have had one family that we were able to help twice. And finally, we have wonderful community donors in the Diamond Hill Baptist Church and Ruth Circle from the Peakland United Methodist Church. And we really appreciate their generosity to our program. All of these monies support the academic success of our students found eligible for services under McKinney-Vento. Allowable expenses include, but are not limited to, keeping each student in the school of origin with transportation whenever plausible, school supplies, school clothing, and uniforms for WMBAS, food for those who are food insecure and for whom we cannot immediately connect to a food bank, the 3-night hotel stays that I just mentioned, after-school tutoring, and wraparound services such as medical or dental care, among other things. Tonight, Director Brown asked us to share glows and grows. I think our glows include the fact that we now have a division-wide K-12 set of processes and procedures for attendance and truancy. We are now headed into year 2 of implementation for that. These processes and procedures continue to support both the LCS school board policies and the requirements set forth by the Code of Virginia. Another glow would be that ITRT was restructured this year and facilitated by the Lynchburg City School team, and our ITRT data was encouraging for the first semester and appeared successful in regard to return to learn. When I finish disaggregating the data, I hope that I find it's been successful for the entire year. We have provided after-school tutoring for McKinney-Vento students this year and hope to expand that in the coming year, along with a possible language acquisition program for our McKinney-Vento English language learners. Our grows include the fact that we're working to ensure all processes and procedures continue to be implemented with fidelity. And we're working to provide additional services and supports for our McKinney-Vento students. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to ask Zoe Stokes to come up and give a brief update about mental health services.
Good evening, school board. Hello. Thank you for allowing me to share some of the amazing work and partnerships that are happening daily in LCS. I am Zoe Stokes. I am Student Services Supervisor, primarily involved with all things mental health. Where'd you go? Mess me up here. Okay, our first slide shows multiple areas we would like to highlight. So let's start with youth mental health first aid. We started with a train the trainer model conducted May 31st through June 2nd in 22, with 15 LCS staff members, including school counselors, school psychologists, school social workers, a librarian, a behavior coach, and a classroom teacher. We also had one other staff member that was already trained, for a total of 16 instructors. With Dr. Edwards' support and encouragement, trainings began in July of 2022. We have trained over half of the LCS workforce at this point, approximately 814 staff, to include the majority of transportation, nutrition, and school building staff. We have conducted 40 training sessions just between July of 22 and June of 23. We currently have 2 more trainings scheduled for this summer, and then we'll resume with the session the first week that all the staff return. And then a few more sessions during our professional learning days in October and January. We invite any board member that would like to attend a training to do so, and we'd also like to thank Dr. Carter for attending one of our very first training sessions. Thank you. Our next piece is school-based outpatient therapy. Therapy and/or counseling services were provided to all LCS schools and programs such as Empowerment and Fort Hill Community School during the 22-23 school year. Students and parents can choose to participate in counseling services. It is voluntary. It is never dictated. By having the services in school, it allows for them to have less absences because they do not have to leave school. And sometimes parents, if it's scheduled at 11, so they just keep them home, and then they don't get finished to 1, so they just don't come back to school. So having it in the school alleviates some of the attendance issues and excuses for not attending the therapy session. The 3 agencies that provided services this year was Horizon, Impact Living Services, and Strategic. Services are billed through the various parental and guardian insurances. We had 356 students, K through 12, receive therapy at school this year. LCS paid for 42 of those students to receive therapy due to various circumstances, and that was funded through the Title I Part D grant. In the 23-24 school year, the Madeline Center will be added to help the other 3 agencies make sure we can cover. Even though that number seems small, we did have waiting lists. Some staff are only part-time from agencies, so this year we're looking forward to each agency will have at least one staff at every school, full-time, 5 days a week. So we do expect that number to go up. The next one is social emotional behavior supports. Similar to the previously known therapeutic day treatment services, or TDT. The service assists students who struggle with emotional dysregulation, thus causing significant behavior issues, such as physical aggression, eloping from the classroom or building, harming themselves or others, and basically unsafe behaviors in the classroom environment. The agency staff help students to a safe place, de-escalate the behaviors, regulate the emotions, and then transition the student back into the classroom. This looks somewhat different than day treatment did in the past because it is not paid for nor regulated by Medicaid, because LCS pays for this through CARES funding and through the school-based mental health. The difference is that allows more children to participate. One of the issues with day treatment in the past is if you didn't have Medicaid, you could not get the services, and now we're allowing all students to have that service if they need it. Harvest and Impact provided behavior supports to the following buildings: Hutcherson, Heritage Elementary, Lincoln Elementary, Paramount, R.S. Payne, Sheffield, Isinglass High School, and Heritage High School. 87 students received behavior support services. We did not start this till later in the year. We expect those numbers to be higher next year as it goes for a full year. We also plan to expand the service into additional schools, which is contingent on funding, as is everything right now. New for the 23-24 school year, we will be adding substance use services. Impact, Madeline, and Intercept will be providing the following services: psychoeducational groups at the Restorative Suspension Center, the Restorative Academy, and Fort Hill Community School. They will also offer substance use disorder services individually and substance use testing as needed. CVAR, the Central Virginia Addiction and Recovery Resource Coalition, provides a curriculum and teaches Too Good for Drugs and offers the Hype Club, the Healthy Youth, through prevention and education at both Heritage High School and Isinglass. We're currently collaborating with CVAR to potentially add the Too Good for Drugs curriculum at the Restorative Academy and Fort Hill Community School. Self-harm and threat assessments. Lynchburg City Schools and programs did 443 assessments this year. So when a student makes a statement of harm to self or others, whether verbally, written, social media, or a gesture, LCS is required to investigate and determine the seriousness of the threat per Virginia Code 22.1-79.4. Threats can be ranked as low, medium, high, or imminent. On this slide, we see the comparison of the 21-22 school year and the 22-23 school year. As you can see, the elementary self-harm and threat assessments are much higher than last year. This can be attributed in part to better data collection, reporting, and understanding. On this slide, we see the rating comparison between the two school years. We can see the low-risk category is higher than the other two. Sometimes a student just uses a poor choice of words. But in this day and time, we have to investigate and ensure that we're keeping all our students and staff safe. If a student is found at a low or medium risk, depending on the situation, the LCS staff can recommend that a parent or guardian seek further assessment or services for the student. If a student is found at high or imminent risk, the school staff must require, not recommend, the student to be seen for an emergency assessment. Again, per Virginia Code 22.1-79.4, Part A, and the LCS Board Policy EBBZ. Those assessments can occur at the Horizon Center on Langhorne Road or at Lynchburg General ER. They have to do this assessment before returning to school. And when they return to school, the family must bring a paper that is filled out by the staff saying that they are ready to return to school. Some students, they're referred for counseling, some to crisis stabilization, and some of our students were actually hospitalized. Social workers. So as you can see from this slide, our social workers are a very industrious group, spending time with students, families, and staff daily. Let me put those numbers in perspective for you. We started with a fabulous team of 6 school social workers. We were able to hire 1 school social worker in March of '23 under the school-based mental health grant, bringing the total number to 7. We were working on hiring an 8th. We have not been able to get enough candidates to interview at this point. Unfortunately, one of our seasoned social workers resigned at the end of the school year, so we're back to 6. We're actively working towards hiring 2 more social workers to get up to the 8 that we have funding for. On a side note, the national recommendation of school social workers to student ratio is 1 social worker to 250 students. At 6 social workers, LCS is 1 social worker to every 1,122 students. So we are way behind. At 8 social workers, we would be 1 to 982 social workers. Better, but not there yet. We, just like the state and nationwide, are seeing an increased need for student intervention to address mental health challenges. This data continues to show the increased need for mental health and social emotional support for our students within the building, and an increased need for social workers to help meet these needs. In 2021 school year, 2 of our social workers began meeting with a clinical supervisor or to work towards their clinical licensure. One of our social workers has completed her supervision and has applied to take the test this summer. So we should have 2 licensed school social workers when the school year starts. Our other 4 are continuing their supervision and should be completed, hopefully. We've had a couple out on maternity leave, so that slows down their progress, but they should be done in about 2 years. So as far as our GLOWs, crisis response and supports at various locations. Unfortunately, LCS experienced quite a few tragedies and traumas involving both students and staff this school year. The GLOW is we were able to come up with a program in a weekend's time between 2 of our social workers and 2 of our counselors, putting together, it was a parent letter and teacher classroom tips. Because when you're in the midst of this, you don't know how to talk to your child or to the children in the classroom. And so they were able to have something there to help them work through that. Parents are not always sure how to talk to their children about these tragedies, so this was shared out. We increased the number of agencies available to support LCS and our students in various services. We initiated and continue to train in youth mental health first aid. We completed the youth risk behavior survey, which will be presented to the board in August. And we wrote and received the school-based mental health grant. Opportunities for growth are finding and competing for more grant opportunities to fund all these services needed for our students. and to have a more efficient and detailed record keeping and data collection. Mental health is a little bit harder to collect data on as it's individual and personal. So we struggle a little bit with our data collection on that. And that is all I have, and thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Stokes. Wonderful work that you and Ms. Peastrack are doing. At this time, we're going to try to get Ms. Terry to unmute on Zoom, and she's going to talk about student behavior.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
We can.
Awesome. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Edwards. As Dr. Brown said, my kiddos have been passing around pink eye and they finally got me. So thank you for this opportunity to share via Zoom what we've been doing as a division to address student behavior. Next slide, please, Dr. Brown. So first, I would like to acknowledge those who directly work with student services to provide student behavior support. We have our Student Services BCBA, which is a board certified behavior analyst. He supervises our behavior team. Mr. Rich Ferguson ensures that his team collaborates with their respective schools and each other to service the behavior needs of the students in our division. We were also able to add an additional Student Services BCBA through grant funding. And we have Miss Ashley Burks, former behavior coach, working towards licensure to fill that role. In addition to our BCBAs, we have 8 behavior coaches, 4 division level registered behavior technicians, and several school level RBTs as well. Next slide, Dr. Brown. In addition to our behavior team, we have our restorative team. We are fortunate to have 3 outstanding coordinators, 1 for each restorative academy, secondary and elementary, and 1 for the restorative suspension center. We have fully staffed the restorative suspension center and we'll be moving forward with opening the middle school program next year to accompany the high school program. And our restorative academy coordinators are currently working to staff their programs, and those will be open at the beginning of the upcoming school year as well. As Dr. Brown explained earlier this year, one of our major goals was to increase consistency among schools at each level when it comes to discipline practices. Through training on SBAR practices, discipline charts, and progressive matrices for each level, we were able to make great strides towards this goal and really get some consistency built across the division. Another one of our goals last summer was to provide an alternative to suspension for our students. We were able to get that up and running for our high schoolers this year. And as stated earlier, we will have a middle school program opening at the beginning of the upcoming year for those short-term suspensions. We were not able to get the restorative academies up and running, and that was one of our goals. We were not able to staff them in the middle of the school year. Wanted to make sure that we were putting the right people in place to build the foundation that will really help our students. We are on track to open those in the upcoming school year. We also have applied for the STOP grant, and these funds will help provide funds for a position that will make the academies more successful in addressing student behavior and social emotional needs. Now I'd like to dive into some of the data from this past school year and how it's informed us on our decisions and our decisions moving forward. First, we have referrals by grade level for secondary. As you can see, the transition year 6th and 9th grade accumulated the most referrals at each level, and this is consistent with data from previous years. Students in transition years typically struggle with behavior more than others. So if you see those bottom 2, 6th and 9th grade, those are highest 2 there. This graph represents referrals by grade level for elementary students. It's important to keep in mind that expectations for behavior get more stringent as students mature. So it's typical to see more referrals for students in higher grades. We will talk about kindergarten and our plans to help address their high referral numbers momentarily. This graph represents suspensions issued by grade level. As you can see, ninth grade students in that transition year are leading the pack at the high school level. 8th graders did receive more suspensions than 6th graders. Although if you remember from previous slides, they received fewer referrals. It is important to note that consequences get more severe as students get older. So the matrix are designed to be progressive and age appropriate. So students' maturity level is taken into account as well. An 8th grade student would be suspended earlier in the progression of consequences than a 6th grade student. So that's where you see the discrepancy in suspensions and referral numbers for middle school. So these two graphs represent elementary school referrals on the left and suspensions on the right. If you'll notice, the 4th and 5th grade students have more referrals than kindergartners, but they have fewer suspensions. This does not line up with the reasoning from previous slide of more mature students receiving more severe consequences. So I want to explain that to you. First, teachers and administrators are just getting to know kindergartners and are working to put interventions in place to modify behaviors before issuing referrals. So a 5th grader may get a referral for interrupting instruction, but a kindergartner is brand new to the school setting and acceptable behaviors are still being taught. Also, the old DCV codes, which stood for discipline, crime, and violence, carried a stigma that administrators were hesitant to place on young students. So the new SBAR codes are designed to track data rather than build a case for labeling students. And we're working towards that mindset that more data means more information to help students. So we will get there. The referrals that were issued for kindergartners this year were for behaviors that presented a safety concern, and therefore a larger percentage of their referrals actually resulted in suspensions. So this chart displays the most common infractions. It's important to point out that the top 3 are interrupting instruction, failing to comply or respond to staff requests. This is the type of behavior that we will be focused on in the restorative academies. The academies will focus on building the skills needed to be able to have positive interactions with faculty and staff and the skills students need to manage themselves in the classroom. As I said earlier, we were able to get the High School Restorative Suspension Center up and running, and this slide shows a few key data points from the center. I won't go into all of it with you, but I did want to highlight that students who went to the Restorative Suspension Center saw an 87% reduction in referrals, and that was through the end of April. We wanted to make sure that we gave some time, for students to actually accumulate more referrals. We didn't want to say, they got out of the suspension center at the end of May and didn't get any referrals. So we wanted to make sure that we accounted for that. So we stopped it early April and just did two months worth of data there. And we were able to save 405 absences through the end of April. That's 405 times that students were in our care receiving interventions and completing schoolwork where otherwise they would have been at home on a suspension. So that's pretty important. And to wrap up, here are just a few areas we are still working to improve on and a few bright spots from this past year. So for GROWS, we were able to make headway towards consistency, but still have some work to do to break that DCB stigma and constantly collect data for our youngest students. Earlier interventions are needed during transition years, and we're working on that through the restorative academies. More wraparound services for students are needed, specifically in alternative programs, and we are working with the restorative coordinators and Dr. Chris Glover at Fort Hill to get those in place. And lastly, extending the hours in our alternative programs, which we are moving towards in the upcoming year. And for our GLOWs, we increased the consistency with coding behaviors and the resolution given for those behaviors across the division. With the help of Mr. Yarborough and our administrators at each school and their consistency, we were able to better track our behavior data and pinpoint needs. We were able to get Life Push in the Restorative Suspension Center and a few secondary schools to start pilot programs. Dr. Brown will speak to that a little bit more later. We were able to successfully open the Restorative Suspension Center and see some really great results from that. With the help of Ms. Stokes and her grant writing, we were able to gain grant funding and hire more behavior personnel. Those are those RBTs and additional BCBAs. We built some really great community partnerships, and we got some recognition for the programs that we have put into place, and we're able to share with some other school divisions across the state and give them, some tips on what we were doing in our plans moving forward. So I believe that wraps it up for me. I'll be available to answer questions at the end of the student services section, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Terry. All right, we're going to go ahead and run through the last part of our presentation, and we'll wrap up here very shortly. I know it's a long night for everyone. Just want to talk through next steps as we accelerate the work into next school year. And I just want to reiterate a couple things that we're going to continue to do work-wise. We're going to continue to train all of our staff in youth mental health first aid. We're on a 3-year timeline for that, and we've accelerated that and should be completed by next year. So a vast majority of folks got trained, almost more than half. More than half? Can I say that publicly? Yeah, more than half. That sounds better. Have gotten trained in that, and so we're going to continue that work so all of our staff are trained. Restorative counselors, that's something that we were able to solicit through the school-based mental health grant, and that is going to be posted hopefully here very soon, and we're going to start hiring for those positions. Those positions will be able to help mitigate and be more proactive in our schools, and those counselors can do individual counseling sessions with students, group counseling sessions. A huge one's going to be peer mediation, so a lot of times things fester, and then there's not an adult that has the capacity time-wise to help give those students the need to mediate through all that. And these folks will be in buildings to be able to help mediate some of that drama and conflict. And then we are looking to expand our services with Life Push. We've had a lot of success, and anecdotally, the kids have said they've really gotten a lot from those services. Have gotten strategies that they're able to use in schools when they return from their suspensions or the suspension center. So we want to continue to use their services in school suspension at the base schools and also with mentor groups throughout the day. And then character programming. There's always the ability to increase the amount of positive character that we are promoting for our students. And so that's the work that we want to do. As far as accelerating our LCS Restore program, those are our restorative programs in the academies. As we've stated, we've already piloted very successfully the high school program. We've hired a middle school teacher. Just want to also shout out our coordinator, Jared Martin, and our high school teacher, Robert Sanford. Those are two gentlemen that have been in the background, but they are in there every single day doing this work, making huge changes and helping change the trajectory of students' lives. And so if you see them around, please be sure. Thankless work is kind of out of sight, and they're doing a lot of great work over there. We also want to implement our pilot programs for our restorative academies. We don't want to build something K-12 until we can show that it's working, try to make sure that we are responsibly funding these programs and making sure that they're sustainable. And so we are using some grant funding and soliciting more grant funding to get these academies up and running. But we want to focus on what the data is saying, and we have shown you that the kindergarten and first grade are areas of need and intervention, as well as those transition years of 6th and 9th grade. We also want to establish a data collection and monitoring system that's a little deeper than what we're currently doing. So we want to look at transition success when kids go back from these academies. We also want to look at what assets students have, their skills, and their academic gaps, and make sure that we use this time not just to work on students' behavior, but also get them up to speed on their academic gaps. We also want to make sure that they have the skills that they need to move forward and be successful. And we want to refine and expand the services at the suspension center. And so what that looks like is working with Life Push. We're tracking to see how many students get resuspended. We are looking at students and how many referrals are getting back to school, but we want to collect some deeper data as to what students are perceiving to be the most meaningful experiences that they are getting from the center. And so we're going to start implementing surveys to the students, exit tickets, if you will, when they go back to school. This will help identify teachers and people in the building that they have meaningful relationships with, and so we can talk to those teachers and see what they're doing that's making a difference with these students who are typically struggling in other classes. And then we want to embed. We want to get upstream, and so we don't want to just have these interventions after students get in trouble. We want to make sure on a tier 1 level with all of our classes, we're increasing our classroom management skills. We're making sure that teachers have the skills they need to build meaningful relationships, that we're thinking intentionally about how these students re-enter in the classroom. A lot of times our teachers spend the first 2 weeks of school really building that school culture, and they do an amazing job. But sometimes we have students transfer in from other divisions. We have students that are transient across the division, and students that come back from these centers in all ed. And we want to make sure that we welcome them back into the classroom in a meaningful way that helps them out. Just a couple more things, and then we'll be all wrapped up here. And so, talking through mental health, we want to continue to implement the substance use counseling. As we've seen an increase in that, we want to make sure we're taking care of those needs and not just suspending students, but actually addressing them so they have healthy, lifelong habits in high school and beyond. We also want to raise the awareness of mental health services. And there is always that stigma behind mental health, and no one wants to have a mental health issue. And so we want to break down those stigmas and make sure that parents and our community know that it's okay if you need help. And here are the litany of services that we are offering here, right here in your own school and in the community as well. So it's really important to raise that awareness. We want to continue to seek grant funding. And shout out to Ms. Stokes for helping write the school-based mental health grant. So a lot of these grants, and Ms. Peastrack, like you said, with the homeless grant, and Mr. Cornell, these are all grants that our team are doing the work behind the scenes and helping us get those things. And then we need to finish training all of our staff. As far as attendance goes, we want to continue to encourage families to enroll in that Engage program, which is a really powerful program. We just need to make sure that folks are enrolling in it and getting those success coaches. They're going to continue to do the work with ITRT and those 5-day meetings, and do the work in the schools. But we also want to support schools to engage with parents in very meaningful ways, and also increasing the celebration for good attendance. And we want to make sure that we're making it exciting for kids to come to school and positive when they have really good attendance. So in closing, I just want to thank you all for your time and allowing me and trusting me and my team to do the work that we've been doing all year long. As far as overall grows, things that we want to continue to do and continue to grow in is there's CARES funding that we're using for a lot of these services. And Dr. Gupta noted, I appreciate the reminder about the CARES funding. So these are things that we're looking towards other grants to fund those and other creative ways to make sure that when these funds end, these services don't end. As we saw with day treatment when Medicaid made their changes and we lost those day treatment services throughout our school division. And we want to make sure that we're doing those deeper data dives with Life Push and the skills-based assessments. We want to make sure that we're looking at skills development, and we're doing that work as well. GLOWS, LCS Restore, we're really positive that the system that we have created will make a huge difference. I'm confident that we just need to stay the course. We presented a lot of data today, and I want to look at, and I would like to ask you to look at this data as baseline data. We didn't compare everything year to year because this is the first year under our administration and our systems, and we're building those out. And so we are confident that we'll continue to see the tide turn, and we'll see those numbers start to decrease. But we want to really focus on getting good data this year, making sure we implemented systems, we had people that were trained, and we had the right people on the team in the right positions. And we're confident that we have done that. We're more comfortable with our data, and again, we have over 400 students receiving some sort of mental health services in our schools, and we know that that's making a huge difference for our students and families and our community. In closing, I just want to say and just remind everyone, like we've had a really trying year. We've had 4 students die this year. 4 students have passed away. And in a school system, having 1 student pass away is a tragedy, and it's really hard for a school community to deal with. But 4, that's a lot, and that's a lot on our team, and our folks behind me, and the folks that aren't here tonight are the ones that are up middle of the night, on the weekends, very early in the morning, coordinating counseling services, meeting with crying parents, going to vigils. And there is nothing more heartbreaking than a mother's cry at one of those vigils. And so just wanted to shout out our team for doing an amazing job in very, very difficult times. Thank you all for your continued support and encouragement and allowing us to do this work and believing in us. And I just want to also shout out our school counselors. Our school counselors are part of our team. Mr. Lazarus Hamlet was our supervisor of counselors. He's transitioning to his new role as director of counseling at E.C. Glass High School. And we have coming back to the division, Laura Kassler, who's going to take his spot. We didn't share a lot of our counseling data because of his transition, but this is something that we'll be bringing forth next year. But our counselors do an amazing job. Also a very thankless job working with their students and a lot of the mental health and harm assessments, they are doing that work and continue to check on students and making sure that they are okay. And when these tragedies happen, they're working with them. Also, quick shout out to our nurses, our school nurses, our ISEP rodeo program, and our alternative education sites, and our adult ed program. And then lastly, I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Coleman publicly, and thank you for your service on this board. You have been a model of courageous and respectful leadership. I've learned a lot from watching you, and just wanted to thank you for your service. We'll definitely be missing you all, missing you, sir. And so at that point, I'd like to thank you all for your service and ask, are there any questions for tonight?
And Dr. Day, before you, and the floor is yours, even if you hadn't have said that last statement, I wanted to say, Dr. Edwards, this is one of the most comprehensive, substantive, no fluff, detailed direction about what is apparently a community concern. And I want to say thank you to you, Dr. Edwards, Dr. Brown, your team, for actually getting in the trenches with these families that he talked about. It wasn't just photo op opportunities. It was sincere and genuine. And so to use Dr. Gupta's words, we really have a great, great bench. And I'm so thankful for that. Dr. Gupta, you may go right ahead. Now, excuse me, I got all
I can
confused.
say something if you want.
Well, you say something, then Dr. Day. I got a little confused there for a
No,
second.
normally
That's
I
all right.
disagree with him when he use all these big words, but today I agree with you. It was no fluff, no nonsense.
Right.
I'm glad you're here. During your interaction in the school, I never had much interactions, but I'm glad you're part of this LCS family.
Thank you, sir. That means a lot.
Dr. Day, I'm sorry.
Okay. I have a hard time keeping up with all this because you've been very busy. There's been a tremendous amount of information here. And I know you've explained this before, but can you remind me and perhaps anyone else, can you sort out for me the difference between Restorative Academy, Restorative Suspension Center, LCS Restore? We seem to have a lot of things that are restorative one thing or another. Can you sort them out for me?
Yes, sir, absolutely. And I had a, you're asking me to do things that are hard, but I can do the hard things. So let's see here. We do have a graphic here that may help you, sir. And nope. Just bear with me 2 seconds. Yes, found it. All right. So LCS Restore speaks to our entire system, and it's how we want to restore the students in our school system. We don't want to throw away kids. We don't want to say that kids aren't deserving of a quality education because they're making poor choices or they've experienced trauma in life system. So we have different components of that. The first phase was our Restorative Suspension Center, and that is an alternative to suspension. And so instead of students going home or just hanging out in the streets, they go to our center, they're supervised, and they spend their 10-day or less suspension there at the center.
So is that exclusive to high school age students?
It was this past year, and now we'll expand it to our middle school as well. So 6th through 12th grade students in LCS for all suspensions minus any suspension that's of a violent nature or having a weapon.
Okay.
Will go to the suspension center instead of going home.
And then
Ron, is that at base school, or is it
The center is actually at the Amelia Pride building outside of Dunbar. Our transportation and nutrition team has worked wonders with us to be able to provide transportation to that as well. Yes, sir.
And then the Restorative Academy?
Restorative Academy is a more comprehensive, mid-ranged, time-wise program for us, 6 to 9 weeks, and that's something that we'll be opening up in the fall. And those academies, I want you to think about it as a step between Fort Hill. So these aren't students that have been placed at the board or have really significant behavior issues, but these are students that have 10 or more referrals. They just continue to get referrals. They're not really being very malicious, but they're being very distracting. They're not engaged in their own educational opportunities. And instead of just continuing to give them referral after referral, we believe they just don't have the skills that they need to be successful in the base school. And if we could teach those skills in the base school setting, we would have done it by now. So we want to pull those students out from the base school, have them attend the academy, work really diligently and intentionally on their lagging skills that are social or behavioral or academic, and then get them to a place where they can practice those consistently. And once they've done that, then they can transfer back to their base school. If not, then maybe they need a different setting, and that's when we look at Fort Hill or an empowerment-like program.
And that academy, is that a full school day, or is it half school day session?
That academy would be a full school day program, yep. And also, we are looking at establishing a full school day program at Fort Hill as well. Dr. Glover's been great working through that with his team.
Okay, I do, and one more question. I don't know what Life Push is. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, yes, sir. So you may have been absent for this meeting, but we had, last time I was before the board presenting, we had Darius Bethel from Life Push come. Life Push is a human services organization. We don't call them a mental health organization, but they have this research-based method called the 5 phases of human engagement, and they use those 5 phases to build relationships really quickly with students, which allows them to hold students accountable and talk to them about their behavior, and so that they can return back into the classroom. And so what we do is we have the students come and have sessions. Sometimes they're group sessions, sometimes they're smaller group, 1 or 2 students or one-on-one, and they can talk to students about their choices, what they're doing, create plans. At a pilot program we did with them at Heritage High School, they did like a small group mentoring session, and those students did a list of things, including working on their behavior, developing some anger management skills, but also they all have LinkedIn profiles now and worked on a resume and started talking about their future goals. And so a lot of times our students are misbehaving because they haven't connected to their future and haven't had those opportunities.
So is that somewhat, maybe not duplicating, but enhancing what a behavior coach would do with a student?
Yes, if you think about a behavior coach, our behavior coaches typically work more with teachers and classroom and systems of behavior, and they're coaching teachers on how to deal with behavior. Our Life Push folks are going to deal more with students and work more one-on-one with them.
Okay.
And the same thing for our RBTs, registered behavior techs. They tend to work more with the students.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Carter, then Dr. Gupta.
I really appreciated this report. This was really, as Dr. Coleman has already stated, it was wonderful. And going back to the number of days, total absences, do we know how many of those were due to like 10-day or more suspensions?
There is, if you look at the charts, they do correlate. And so when a student is suspended, they do count as an absence. And I think Ms. Terry mentioned that during her section of the presentation. We have saved 405, I believe, absences from school because they're able to attend a program in school. So there is a correlation there. And if you look at the grades that have the highest number of discipline suspensions, and those are also the students that are having the hardest time with attendance as well. So the kindergarten, the 9th grade cohort, and the 8th grade cohort.
But we don't know the exact number. I mean, if we subtract that, because when we subtracted the others, the unexcused, you get up 73,367. But
I don't know if we disaggregated it that way. We didn't look at subtracting suspension numbers from. No, we haven't looked at that. But that's something that we can definitely look and get back to you.
And I know the success of our program is when students don't want to leave. And I know regarding the restorative program, that's one of the things students really enjoy going.
Mm-hmm. They get a lot out of it. Yes, ma'am.
They do. A great job.
Thank you.
Dr. Gupta?
So Restore Academy, I like the idea. How do you plan to fund that? Is there, using the grant money or using existing?
Right.
What student, how much capacity are you going to build there? 50 students, 100?
Yes. So right now we are looking at 10 students per grade level to start off. And so about 40 students total to get the year started. We are using CARES funding to pilot the program, but in the background, we are soliciting other grant funding Also, I've reached out to, won't say it publicly, but some of our delegates and local officials, state officials as well, to try to raise awareness about the importance of what we're doing, and not just to say, please give us more money, but to say, allow us to earn this funding. And, is there opportunities to create grants at the state level that would allow us to apply and try to win some of these awards so that we can do this work? I think that across the state, there is some funding for alternative education, but students, especially coming from a pandemic era, we need different options, and we need to be able to fund those. And so right now it is a pilot, and we are hopeful that we'll get some of these grants, like the STOP grant that we applied for, Stop School Violence Grants. That's a $1 million grant over 3 years, so that would help fund some of that.
Because you mentioned 10 referrals and the behavior doesn't change. And they gotta do something different. And if it disturbs the learning environment in a base school, then they gotta go someplace different.
Right.
And when that happens, in Fort Hill, you have 118 seats for LCS students. Am I correct in my number? 118, 120?
We average around 170 at one time.
Rest are for the other school districts?
Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
how much for LCS? 118, 120?
Approximately, yes, sir.
Let's say 118, 120. So based on the data, it's more than 118 we are pushing there. It means they're going virtual, which doesn't help. The Store Academy to me is sort of a solution. Great idea. Will it die just because of lack of funding? Do you know where I'm going?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
here, culture survey comes, there's a need to rebuild that respect and need to rebuild where the teachers feel comfortable that if you call me names, if you throw chairs at me, you're out of there. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So this looks like a middle ground where it's not Fort Hill, but what will it take to make it a reality?
Right.
That's where I'm going.
Well, it will take
Will the
commitment funding
superintendent be able to fund you
We definitely will need support. And like I said, I never want to just say, give me more money. The solution is more money. I want to always take the approach of allow us to pilot this. We're going to try to figure it out. And if it is successful in making a difference, we would like community support and state and local support to help fund these initiatives, especially if they're making a huge difference for our kids in our community. The other great benefit to the restorative academies is allowing us to step students down. So some students have been at Fort Hill, not just months, but sometimes years. And so it's a big change to go from a small setting at Fort Hill back to a base school, a Heritage or EC Glass with over 1,000 students. And so we have a program where we'll be able to bring students from Fort Hill half the day, step them down through the Restorative Academy half the day, and then Restorative Academy half the day, to base school half the day, and then back to the base school, instead of just a shock to the system of here's this small setting and now you're back with all your peers. Because we have seen that hasn't been as successful. So we definitely need the commitment financially, and we're excited to give this a trial to see how the data looks. I appreciate the question.
Mr. Trost?
Dr. Brown, I want to commend you for putting together this program. The vision is fantastic. From time before I was even on the school board, talked to people in the community, people in the schools, and there has been a desire for this type of program. You actually are identifying students and putting them in a setting where they can thrive and improve and modify behaviors. And I know I've asked you this before, but I want to make sure this type of program is explained to our city leaders, our city council. And I hope our city council is listening, because these are the types of things that our community wants and needs. Unfortunately, it costs money to do it. This will be one of the biggest improvements to our city school system in general, to help with all different levels, from behavior to closing the achievement gap to improving our learning environment for not only our students but our teachers. I hope the city council is listening to what this program is able to do. I respect the fact that you say and acknowledge, I want to earn the funding. I think so far in such a short timeline you've shown what can be successful at the high school level. You're planning to roll it out to the middle school level. The need is there. I think everybody in our community would give you the best accolades possible for this. We are going to be running out of funding potentially for this. I applaud you for going and finding grants, but we need the support of our local leaders to continue this excellent program for the benefit of all of our school system and all of our children. So, very good, well done.
Thanks,
Appreciate the people you've brought with you today. Thank you very much. And let us know what you need to try to help you get the funding you need to continue this program. So thank you very much.
You got it, absolutely. And we are building a great team around it as well. I'm really excited. Kim Scott, who has been a 14-year principal in a neighboring division, took a chance. She knows it's a one-year position. Took the chance to come out here with all that experience to lead this and start to build this with Ms. Terry, who's going to be our program lead over top of the suspension center. And we're about to hire another person within our division. Don't want to announce that publicly yet. It hasn't been officially offered. But we're really developing a great team, and some people are taking a risk, and they said it's well worth it because their heart is in this and they know the importance of what this can do and what this can be for our kids and our school system.
Is it possible to develop a budget to scale it up maybe to 50, to 100, to 200 students? How much money will it take? Because right now we just, and going forward, based on the change in infrastructure, we may have a space available and there'll be prioritizing of, how to use it.
Right.
Personally, to me, this is a great idea.
Absolutely.
It takes the trouble out of the base and puts them in a place where they will, you can nurture them and they grow.
Right.
So is it possible to put not hours and hours of work in a rough budget? How
Yes.
much will it take?
Yes, sir. We've already looked at that and have some projections on what it would take to sustain the current level of programming. And I didn't bring that with me today, but if you need it, future board meetings, it's right upstairs on my desk, so we can pull that out and print it up.
Right?
Because right now, as capacity is 40 students, what part of that program is that? Is it
Right,
across
so-
all the different pieces?
Let's just use the high school, for example. So first quarter will be those 10 students, and then 9-week program. So then we'll have another 10 after that for second 9 weeks. So 40 high school students total, 40 middle school students, and same for the elementary, but 40 kindergartens and 40 first grade students. So that's how many will roll through the program in a whole year.
For the whole year. So
Yes.
the actual capacity at any given time, what's the actual capacity for one given 9-week period?
It's 20 students at the secondary level, 20 students at the elementary level.
Okay. And that's what I want to make sure we understand.
Yeah.
Because it's a great pilot. The need is greater than what the capacity is based
Absolutely.
upon the disciplinary board hearings we sit in.
Right.
And also in terms of talking to you talk to the teachers, the SROs, school leadership, the need and desire is there. Talk to the students, they'll tell you the need and desire is there. So, well done, and I think, high priority for me personally.
Yeah.
Okay.
My only advice will be, please keep it simple. Because when you mix and match half-day base school, half-day Restore Academy, it could put strains on the system.
Sure.
Transportations and other, in business we say keep it simple, especially in the beginning because you don't have resources to deal with a complicated logistics management.
That's good feedback, and I'll note it. Yes, sir.
All right, has everyone had a chance to share? Dr. Sinha, that you want to add to the discussion?
Thank you, but no.
Okay.
Excellent work, really impressive, and look forward to seeing results moving forward. Really appreciate you've had a great first year here, and we're so glad to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha. Well, let's give Dr. Brown and his team a great big hand, and we will move on in our agenda, and we're going to ask Dr. Edwards to lead us in a brief discussion about the budget.
It will be very brief discussion about the budget. First, let me just commend Dr. Brown and the Student Services team and everybody behind the scenes. And the one thing that I do want to just stress is that all of the hard work that they have done, the midnight grant writing hours, the see you here on Sundays type of work, is all so that our teachers can focus on teaching our kids. And so sometimes when people question, well, what do they do? What do they do? It's the behind the scenes work. It's the supportive work that allows our classroom staff, our school staff, to do the instructional work that they need to do while they build the infrastructure for external support. So I am happy that they're on the team, and we all are going to see a difference in all of the teams aggressively searching for grants and looking for just other avenues of revenue, just because that is the state of where we are right now. And just to further talk about, you heard them mention team members, BCBAs, behavioral coaches. Those are all folks who are in that administrative budget when we talk about categorical funding. So just to keep it in perspective as to the who are the folks in there, in addition to finance, HR, my office, and the communications office, there are a lot of student services personnel that are doing some awesome work. So thank you, Dr. Brown.
No problem.
That.
And Ms. Terry texted me and corrected me, which she often does. 20 high school students and 20 middle school students is what we're programming for. So, yep, I just wanted to let that be known. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Yeah.
Dr. Evans.
Okay, with regard to our current operating budget, we are still kind of sitting in wait. There is no new update on state funding yet. I'm hopeful that this week we'll hear some news regarding the final state budget. Right now, as was allocated by City Council, we are sitting on what was the December 16th governor's proposal for our budget. That may change once we get final state numbers. The other update is we did send over to City Council our request to reallocate funds, not increase. So we're still working with a little bit over $109 million as a total school budget, but to reallocate funds by moving some from the administration category and some from the technology category into the instruction category, as well as one of our not favorite things, but also using some CARES funding to supplement going forward so that we could still move forward with 1547. They had the first reading on that, and their next reading, I believe, is next week. Their second reading, so we will know next week if that also is a finalized move, which puts us in a very crunch time of, I think we scheduled a brief meeting, and really brief, we have one agenda item for June 29th to approve our budget, and that's contingent on, one, City Council approving the change, two, state funding coming in, and then three, City Council also allocating the state funding in a similar fashion as they did the governor's budget. And then that will give us a budget that we can approve officially and put up our budget documents for the public to see. So, did I miss anything? Nope. Any questions, thoughts?
So the General Assembly has not approved the budget yet.
No.
So how could we approve our final budget not knowing whether it'll be the skinny version or the regular version?
We're operating on a wish and a prayer, and we picked a date of June 29th to kind of hope that a lot of work happens in the next 2 weeks.
Because the primaries are tonight, so those who are hoping to come to census will happen after today, but then there's not much time between now and June 30th. My point is, on 29th, when we come as a group, what are we approving? We are approving a budget minus the adjustments by the state? Or we approving the budget just for what City Council has approved?
We will approve whatever budget is available to us at that time, but we had to schedule a date just on the off chance that, yes, suppose the General Assembly does give us a budget within the next 2 weeks, and City Council can also review it and allocate it, or at least look at it. That is what we're gonna try to approve. We needed to set a date, hopefully before June 30th, so that we could close the year with an approved budget. If that doesn't happen, if we get to the next 2 weeks and we have no movement, we're exactly where we are right now. But a save the date and a notification to the public that this is what we anticipate, and we didn't pick Friday, June 30th. I think Friday is June 30th. We picked Thursday, June 29th at 5 o'clock as one of the last dates in June. If we have to cancel it because we do not have information, then we will do that. But better to have it scheduled and be ready than to not have it scheduled and not be able to have a quorum.
Okay.
What are we doing with the contracts? They're still going out?
Contracts are still going out with
Those
some
are the
pending.
updated numbers?
With some- Yes, but pending, of course, budget approval.
So they will not get in their paycheck till the budget is approved. So if my salary is going up to $15 an hour, I will not see, no, cannot use the word fruits, a little bit of fruit, teeny tiny fruit of it in July paycheck, or will it be after the budget is approved?
We would see it after the budget was approved. Hopefully, we'll get the budget approved on June 29th. But if there is a difference, let's just say there's a stall on everybody's part, and then somewhere in, please don't let this happen, but somewhere in August it happens, then we'll have to go back and retroactively pay the folks. So they wouldn't miss anything, but we are hopeful that that's the worst case scenario.
So just want people who are listening, they will get their paycheck retroactively, even if the budget is not approved. There's no need to lose sleep.
No.
You gave me $15, but my paycheck is still on $13.61. That Dr. Edwards will cover the back.
Are you, Dr. Edwards?
The bank of Dr. Edwards will cover. As a school division, if we have to wait for several weeks after the start of the new fiscal year, July 1, and if that impacts what our payroll and finance department can get out, we are going to make sure that our families, our staff are made whole by either somehow a retro added to the next check or whatever is easiest for them to do that. So.
Dr. Carter?
And everyone is aware that the contracts went out late because of this. And are we continuing that message? Because I've heard that some people were complaining, and I said, well, it's known that you're not going to be, the contracts will be late or delayed because of this, everyone's budget.
Yes, all superintendents are in the same boat. Some of us, our boats look a little better without the state piece, but within their locality parts, they had a little bit less to do or even more support so that they could be a little bit more aggressive in sending their things out. But pretty much all of us superintendents are doing the same thing, sending out contracts with some contingency language in there because everybody is waiting on the state. We have communicated that with our staff to let them know that this is forthcoming and we want to get them out before, I think June 30th is now our target date. And if we can do them sooner, that would be great, but definitely by June 30th. And we're hopeful that by the end of this month, we all will be sitting here with some good news about at least having a budget direction and knowing where we're going.
All right. Dr. Carter?
I missed your going away or the recognition ceremony, and I said, well, I must, but I just wanted to say the best thing I can say is that you are a true man of God, that you have really set a standard and showed us. I worked with you as the vice chair and saw how when people attacked you and attacked the schools, that you always were so patient and said that you were going to go the extra mile to work with those individuals. Now, that's not always my practice, and you showed me that. So you are wonderful, that if people can't get along with you, then there's a problem, because you really make it your effort to really go after those individuals and just really work with them and just work, the patience and the godliness that you have shown, it's really applaudable, and I just thank you for that. And you have taken us from just not knowing much, just because of your interaction with VSB and how you work with the other individuals and other school systems, and you've known just the ways that you can do things. You really elevated us. Now we've gone back in time, but we're going to try to pull out anyway. So, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And your efforts.
It's a pleasure to work with you.
It's been a pleasure working with you.
Everything you said about me, double your way.
Oh, thank you.
Dr. Gupta.
You know, we are brothers from different mothers, but we never agree with each other. And we fight all the time. But I wanted to take this moment, Dr. Edwards, to thank you for running this district with 8,000 students and 1,200 employees. It's not easy. If somebody says otherwise, they need to come and talk to me or get their brain examined. And I'm putting it very flatly out there. And as an individual school board member, I'm assuming my colleagues here feel the same way, and you will have that support ongoing, and underline the word ongoing, no matter what. So you can count on that, and please don't get distracted by any nonsense out there.
Trust me, if I was going to get distracted, it would have happened by now. There were plenty out there just getting distracted. I mean, I just want to say, just as the I guess by title leader, but definitely not leading alone. I have a fantastic team of folks that make this happen.
Yes, you
and
do.
any superintendent who's worth their salt understands the importance of team and building the people and giving credit where credit is due. So there are many folks in this division. A lot were here tonight or in this room, sit in these seats every other week when we have school board meetings to make sure that we stay focused on what's best for kids. And I will say what's beautiful about this team is when we say to each other, check your titles at the door, we really mean check your titles at the door. So as you witnessed when Dr. Brown said, Miss Terry is correcting me, as she often does, that happens with all of us. That happens with me. I'm fortunate that I have a good team that knows how to manage up, that can question my decisions, hold me accountable, make sure that I know that there may be another way to do this. Let's pull this back to the table. And I think that's what makes an excellent school division. And we definitely have excellence here in Lynchburg City Schools, on top of having a very supportive, and by supportive, I don't mean a yes, Dr. Evers, anything you want board, but a supportive board that you support what's best for children. And that even though I can think 5 years ago, man, I did not have to do this much data analysis and give you this, but the fact that you had a presentation tonight that was data rich, and as Dr. Brown said, let me show you why we're going to earn the money, shows the milestones of where we've come from when I first started in April and had my first meeting with you all and kind of wondered what the systems were in place. So we'll continue to do those types of things and to move forward and do what's best for kids.
I hope we can replicate to the academic side of the operation. You know, Mr. Andrews said one thing which has stuck in my brain. He said, we are not perfect, but we are willing to change. Remember, you stood up one day, and that has stuck in my mind. Nobody is perfect. I can find 20 flaws in him, and he can find 50 in me. But we're willing to change and make a difference. That was your word? I hope I'm paraphrasing it right.
Perfect.
All right, well, we have finished all of the agenda items for this work session, and thank you for that, Dr. Edwards. That was sensational, I believe. I look over and I see Amy Pugh. She was working maybe with technology and all of that at first, and you were absolutely brilliant. You knew how to help me understand all these computers and things and get it straight, and now you are just an exceptional deputy superintendent. And to have Dr. Waterco over on the other side with great skills, I'm just Ms. Capazzi over there, I'm just so proud. And when I arrived, Wendy Sullivan was the clerk, and she knew everything. And I must say, Tina, you are already, Wendy is such a great spirit. She probably listening to me. But we thank you for the excellence that you have brought to us as our clerk. Well, you've got some information. Well, there's no new policy updates. I can skip right over that unless somebody has something else. And the informational items, Thursday the 29th will be a placeholder if needed. And you see all these wonderful things ahead of this next iteration of the board. You got a reorg meeting and work sessions and new school board member orientation. Now, before I adjourn the meeting, let me say this 30-second statement that I want to make, and then I'm going to put the gavel down. The meeting will be over. With at least 216 business work session type meetings over 9 years. Not to mention committee meetings, trainings, school events, interviews with the media, and so much more for me is about to come to an end. Bob, you were absolutely excellent today in your interview. You have been an amazing vice chair, as you also, Dr. Carter. And I am sure, Kim, you will be effective tomorrow as well in your interview.
Yes.
I do want the public to know yes, ma'am. I do want the public to know I'll be remaining as the chair of the VSBA Federal Relations and Legislative Positions Committee until the close of November in the convention in Williamsburg, and then continuing to be an advocate for VSBA in Richmond regarding critical issues that impact public education at the state level, and always looking out for Lynchburg, Virginia. With this in mind, I can, on July the 1st, sit in my wonderful chair you gave me. Thank you all so much. May God bless Lynchburg City Schools, Superintendent Edwards, Central Office staff, and our strong master Lynchburg City School Board. This meeting is adjourned.